Welcome back, everyone. It's here. And today I've got some r/BestOf for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the posts, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. This post was collected by Choice Evidence 1983, and their tagline is, "It dawned on me that he was a wizard." The original OP is Suitable Mission 7422, posted to r/True Off My Chest. Content warnings for child abandonment, emotional abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, and possible infidelity. Originally posted February 4th, 2025. My husband left our 5-year-old and 9-month-old home alone and refuses to explain why. My husband is 43 and I'm 31. We've been married for 7 years and have a 5-year-old and a 9-month-old. My husband left our children alone and he refuses to admit to it or tell me where he was. I'm furious, enraged, and my husband keeps telling me that I'm making a big deal about nothing. This just happened this weekend. I'm on the board of directors for a local nonprofit organization. I had to attend an event for that organization this past Saturday, and I was gone for most of the day. My husband was supposed to be home with our kids. I texted him a few times and he responded, and when I called around midday, he didn't respond, but that's not very unusual. Shortly after that, I got a call from my mom. She said my son had just called her, and when she asked him what he and his sister were doing, he said they were both watching TV. When she asked where their dad was, he said his dad wasn't there. My mom asked him several other questions, and from my son's responses, she believed he was telling the truth and that my husband wasn't there and that there was no adult there at all. She said that he didn't seem scared to be alone or worries about where his dad was. He just called her to chat. He has a tablet designed for children with pre-programmed contacts that he can call. It's only a few people, just family members. I left the event immediately and began texting and calling my husband repeatedly. He didn't respond to my first several attempts. It took him about 10 minutes. I was halfway home at that point to respond. I was so confused, so worried, really mad, and I asked him where he was. He said he was at home. I told him that our son had just told his grandmother that he was home alone with his baby sister watching TV about 15 minutes ago. My husband denied it, and I told him I was too upset to talk and drive. When I got home, I checked on the kids right away and they were both fine. I asked my husband again, where was he? He said he was home the entire time. He doesn't know what our son was talking about, but he must have been confused since he had gone to the basement to do some laundry. I ran down to the basement. It was the same load of laundry I'd thrown in the dryer the night before. He didn't do any laundry when I was gone. I asked my husband why my son would be confused about whether his dad was home or not. Where in our home would he have gone and for how long for our son to think his dad wasn't home? That doesn't make sense with a 5-year-old and a 9-month-old. You wouldn't leave them unattended for that long. Why was he nowhere to be found when my mom asked my son to go check certain areas of the house? I begged my husband to just admit it, to stop treating me like an idiot, and to stop accusing our son of lying. Just tell me the truth, because being lied to right to my face is so incredibly maddening. He insists he was home, but he can't come up with any believable story of where he was or what he was doing during that time. The way he answers me when I ask him about this and demand truthful answers is so dismissive. When I tell him, "You left our children alone," he quickly says, "No, I didn't. So anyway." He says I'm overreacting and letting our son's imagination drive me crazy. I am convinced he was gone. We don't have a Ring camera, but at least one of our neighbors does. I'm so upset about this that I'm tempted to ask our neighbor for the Ring footage. I had to go out to my car and scream and cry because I got so upset. Of course, I didn't want my kids to see my reaction. I can't put into words how upset I am about the fact that I know he must have really left them alone, but have no proof, and am being treated like I'm just a paranoid nutcase of a mother/woman by him. So before we get into the relevant comments, let me give you a little bit of some Oz certified advice, which of course that degrades the quality of the advice, but it's still advice nonetheless. If you have suspicions like what OP has here, where her husband was gone and is saying that he was home the entire time, go to his car, pop the hood, and hover your hand above the engine bay. If that shit is warm, he's lying. If it's electric, you can probably do the same with the brake discs. They're the big metal rotors that are behind the rims. Never directly touch the metal, just hover your hand a few centimeters near it and you should be able to feel the radiating heat. If it's warm in any way beyond like what the ambient temperature is, that motherfucker is lying. And that car was active. Anyways, relevant comments. Commenter 1. It's either drugs or an affair. Also, the fact that your 5-year-old was calm and nonchalant about the situation makes me believe that he does this frequently enough that the kids are used to it. OP responds, my mom said she and my son chatted for at least 5 minutes before she asked him where his dad was. And when she asked that, she still didn't think anything was wrong. She was just trying to make conversation. He gave no indication that anything was wrong, and when she started asking him more questions regarding his dad's whereabouts, he didn't seem fazed. Commenter 2. I agree that it's either drugs or an affair if he's truly leaving them alone. To ease your mind, get the footage from your neighbor, but do not tell him. Furthermore, given your son's nonchalance about being left alone, this may not be the first time your husband has done this. Ask your son. Aside from the fact that this is highly dangerous, there are legal ramifications that the both of you can face should the authorities be alerted that the children are being left home alone. You should also get nanny cams. These are discrete cameras unlike a Ring camera. Place them in strategic locations throughout your home. OP responds, he definitely won't be left alone with them anymore, unless it's a test where I'm secretly watching the entire time. In response to the general question of, does OP's husband have any accounts that she wasn't aware of, such as bank accounts, etc.? He has a separate bank account that I don't have access to. It's not a secret account, I know it exists. I don't have a debit card for it, I'm not named on the account, and I don't have his login details. I have no clue what's in it. We have a joint account too. He has his own credit cards. I don't know what's on those either. Commenter 3. I feel like the timeline is weird. How did your husband get home in the 10 minutes since he answered your phone call and you got there? Doesn't mean I think he's telling you the truth, and I think you should get the Ring footage to put either claim to rest. Is your husband friends with any neighbors? OP responds, if he was within 10 minutes from our house, well, he speeds on a good day. So, if he was in his car and within 20 minutes of our house, he technically could have got home in time. I wondered if he actually got my initial panic calls and texts, didn't answer, started racing home, and then finally picked up once he was home so he could pretend he was there all along. Additional information from OP on her conversation with her 5-year-old son regarding her husband/his father. I talked to him after I calmed down a little bit. His story was virtually the same as what he told my mom, with a few more details, but nothing that gave me any clue about what my husband was up to. I asked him what he did when I was gone. He said daddy made him pancakes and they drank coffee outside. My 5-year-old doesn't actually drink coffee, but he pretends to drink it in the morning and he likes to sit outside with his hot coffee. His sister had a giant poop explosion, and of course he remembered that. And apparently dad was there to clean that up because he said she pooped everywhere, and he had to help dad give her a bath, and it was disgusting. Curious that my husband supposedly did laundry but left the poop cover onesie unwashed. That was the highlight of his day, and he loved telling me about how gross it was. I asked him if daddy left, and he said yeah, daddy left, like it was no big deal. I asked him what he did when daddy was gone. He said he watched TV. I asked him what he watched. I asked him what his sister, the 9-month-old baby, was doing when daddy was gone, and he said she was in the living room watching TV with him too. I asked him if he was sure daddy was gone. He said yeah, daddy wasn't home. I asked him how he knew, and he said daddy's keys were gone, and daddy told him to stay in the living room with his sister. He has no real concept of time, so asking him how long daddy was gone for wouldn't really mean anything. I didn't want him to feel like he was in trouble or like I was grilling him, and it sort of seemed like that's how he started to feel when I kept asking questions. Update, February 8th, 2025, 4 days later. Last weekend, my husband left our 5-year-old and 9-month-old home alone while I was gone, and then refused to admit it or prove a plausible explanation. Since then, we had many arguments about it. I've been living in a constant state of anger and frustration. I didn't want to fight about it anymore, but I couldn't help it, and I kept bringing it up again and again. I couldn't lay low and pretend to get over it while I waited for him to do it again and catch him in whatever was going on. I also knew that demanding he tell me the truth wasn't going to get me anywhere, since he'd been refusing to talk and deflecting for days. All it was doing was making me enraged, and I feel like I was about to have a brain aneurysm. I told him to hand me his phone so I could check his location at the time. He refused. He said he wouldn't do it and that it was a violation of his privacy. He won't be treated that way and refuses to give in to my delusions. You think I enjoy being in a situation where I have to beg my husband to show me his phone so I can see where he was at? I hate it. I don't want to live that way. I told him it's simple. If he was really at home the entire time, just prove it. Why wouldn't he want to clear this whole thing up? I got so mad that he wouldn't turn over his phone that I told him I was going to go to the neighbors to get their doorbell footage. At first, he was like, fine, go do it. He didn't think I actually would. He knows I don't like to air drama to others, so he probably figured I'd just swallow all of this crap he's been giving to me. Luckily, I was totally being driven by anger at this point, so nothing was going to stop me from going to the neighbors. When I actually started to go out the door, he tried to stop me and followed me out the door. I felt pure anger rushing through my veins, nothing else. The neighbor, who I've probably said less than 10 words to in the entire time we've lived here, told me he'd send me the footage. I went home, told my husband that the neighbor didn't have the footage from that day anymore, and told him I just needed to go to the store and cool off. So I put the kids in the car and went and parked somewhere while I waited for the neighbor to send me the footage. I have the neighbor's number now too, and he told me if I needed any more footage, he will be happy to give it to me. The video shows a blue car that I don't recognize show up and park in our driveway. A blonde woman gets out of the car and goes towards my house. She walks on the outside of our garage toward the gate leading to our backyard. The gate is too far back and out of the way to be seen on the doorbell footage. She and her car were there for 23 minutes. Imagine that. The car leaves right around the time that my husband called me to say he was home and had been home the entire time, as I was rushing home in a panic and calling him on repeat. One of two possibilities as to where they went. She either came in through the side door of the house, which does provide direct access to the basement, or, and what I think is more likely, is that they were in the backmost area of our yard, which is a gated pool area. Immediately behind our house is a grass lawn, then you step down a few steps and we have a patio. And then there's a fully gated area where the pool is. It's not like you think of when you picture a gated pool. It's a full 6-foot wooden fence all the way around, plus even taller landscaping for added privacy. You can't see into the area at all unless you're inside. I think it's more likely that they were back there because my son said his dad's keys were gone and we keep that gate locked with a key. The pool is closed for winter, but there is one small building back there, sort of like a shed we converted into a changing area. And there's a covered patio with furniture. I'm convinced that's where they were. So technically, he was home, but in an area totally removed from the house and where he couldn't see or hear the kids if something happened. I asked him how he could explain this. What were they doing? I obviously don't need him to tell me what they were doing, but for some reason I still had hope that he'd finally be honest. He wasn't contrite. He showed no remorse. He was just like, yeah, she was there. But I obviously never left. Who is she? How long has this been going on? And if he's going to be such a disgusting, despicable excuse of a man, then why couldn't he at least have found any other time and any other lie or excuse other than when he was home alone with our kids? I told him how I know this has happened before, and I demanded to know how many times he's done this when he's been home alone with the kids. He swears this is the only time, but he still doesn't have the balls to confess to what they were doing. I don't believe him that this was the only time, FYI. I still have so many questions and I still feel like my heart is beating 200 times a minute. My blood pressure is through the roof. I've cried a lot, sobbed, begged for somebody to help me, yelled, screamed, ordered a bunch of books about divorce and custody, and you know what? The next day after our multiple explosive fights, him putting hands on me and me seeing the evidence, he acted like everything was totally normal and like none of that stuff ever happened. He put hands on you? I woke up still seething, exhausted, broken, and he's acting like everything is totally normal. He said he was ordering breakfast to be delivered from our favorite breakfast place. He asked if I wanted to go to the store together later to try his new recipe for chili tonight. Just what? Why would I want to do any of these things with you now? Absolutely no acknowledgement of anything he's done or what's transpired between us in the past few days. He deserved an Oscar for how well he was able to act like none of that happened, completely comfortable and non-fazed. I know that it's a waste of my energy, but I just desperately want him to admit the full truth of what he did that day and any other day with this woman. I want to hear it from him. It won't change whatever he's done, but he could at least have the respect and decency to be honest now that he's been caught. That's a ridiculous thought though, right? How foolish of me to expect this man to show decency and honesty now. If he was a decent and honest man, then he wouldn't have had a strange woman over to our house and been out of sight from our kids for 23 minutes. His continued denial and refusal to admit to anything other than the bare minimum, his attitude like I'm somehow being controlling or infringing on his rights by asking for information. That's almost more hurtful than him cheating on me. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. So he fucked a blonde in the back while leaving the kids unsupervised. Sorry, but that is the only explanation. He wasn't planning a surprise for you. He wouldn't shit on the kids' safety for that. He left the kids alone for something selfish, and he was brazen and comfortable enough to bring his side piece to your house. At this point, every word out of his mouth has been a lie. You should ask the neighbor if he's seen that car before. OP responds, I know they were fucking. I'm not trying to delude myself into thinking she came over to talk or for a cup of tea. I just want him to admit it. It's driving me crazy that he won't admit to it even though he's been caught. Commenter 2. OP, he has not been honest and won't be honest. Even if he is, what would that give you? Could you even believe it? OP, you know what he was doing. You don't need him to spell it out for you. Put yourself and your children first. OP responds, at the end of the day, him admitting to what he's done wouldn't really change anything. It certainly won't change anything he's done. It won't make it better, and I probably still wouldn't believe I was getting the full truth. Yet, I can't stop seething over the fact that he's refusing to give me any info. Commenter 3. Weird thing is, if he showed his location, it would have been at home and probably put you more at ease that he didn't leave. He's garbage, especially to be doing that shit when he has kids. Leaving them on their own, he'd rather cheat and possibly his kids getting hurt or dying. Disgusting. OP responds, yes, it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't he have just given me his phone? It makes me think that there are other things on his phone besides his location that he doesn't want me to see. Commenter 4. I'm really concerned for your mental health. I read the original post too. Maybe I watch too many psychological thrillers, but this comes across like he's a psycho intent on making you look unhinged, so he can admit you to a psych ward, or at least divorce you, get out of alimony and child support, and keep the house and kids. I'd pack the kids up if I were you, go to your parents for a bit and cool off. Call a lawyer, stat. Start the divorce and keep that recording. OP responds, I'm concerned for my mental health right now too. OP definitely just needs to make sure that she's maintaining a paper trail throughout the divorce, because that's going to be extremely important. Hopefully, OP having the evidence that he was willing to just leave the kids alone for who knows how long in some cases would be enough to help get custody resolved fairly easily. Because the thing is in this case, that 23 minutes was just because the wife was on her way home because she found out. We don't know in the past how long he would spend in the backyard and closed pool area with his side piece and leaving the kids to watch TV. Thank God for the neighbor's Ring camera, because OP probably would have never got the answer she was looking for. And kind of like the commenter said, if it wasn't for that Ring camera, it would have probably looked as though OP was going fucking crazy and would have definitely caused a very different story. I also am happy that she was able to get definitive evidence through the neighbor's camera, because unfortunately, my technique would not have worked of checking the car's temperature. But either way, I still think it's good advice just for you to have in your back pocket. And hopefully OP can get away from this mess of a husband that she's found herself with. This post was collected by Direct Caterpillar 77, and their tagline is, of course, Satan is not a pogo stick. The original OP is u/tracksuit tirade, originally posted to r/legal advice on December 13th, 2018. Neighbors disfigured my trees and bushes, claim previous owner gave them permission. I moved this month to Washington State, and my yard borders windows of the neighboring property. The neighbor's yard is on the other side of their house, so their kitchen and living room plus one of their upstairs bedrooms and, from what I can best ascertain, the window to a study, are pressed right against the dividing property line between the two yards, a small stone path. Along the edge of my property, but not overlapping with the divider, which a surveyor has verified as accurate when we were buying the home, we have 3 black walnut trees and 4 bushes. We're not 100% sure what they are, but sending pictures to a botanist friend and asking the internet. The best guess is honey locusts. After about a week after we moved in, the new neighbors approached us and said the previous tenant had promised to trim the trees because they blocked the view of their windows. I called the previous owner and he said he promised nothing of the sort, and half the reason he planted the bushes along the existing tree line was because the neighbors complained about his cookouts in the yard, making them feel as though they had to draw their curtains for privacy, which they didn't like. So, the bushes were essentially a privacy hedge. The previous owner did just move into an assisted living for dementia patients though, so I'm waiting to get double confirmation from his daughter. We told her, the neighbor, sorry but no. Both because the trees provided nice shade and without the bushes in the lower level, they'd be able to see directly into our house and vice versa. We went away for the weekend and found 5 large branches and a dozen smaller branches missing from our trees, exactly where their windows were blocked. The trees look hideous and diseased now because of these giant bulb patches, and no longer provide privacy or adequate shade. One of our bushes was completely gone. 2 others crudely uprooted from the ground and unsalvageable. The neighbors said the black walnut trees had been there since he moved in 60 years ago, and the bushes had been in 15 years. I figured I was screwed because we didn't have security cameras or anything to prove they did this, but as a last-ditch attempt, I sent them an email asking if they knew what had gone on. To which they had the audacity to reply as though they'd done us a favor. Their exact words. Yes, we decided it was unfair for you to shoulder the burden of the previous property owner's unfinished business, so went ahead and had a crew take care of it out of our own pocket this weekend. No need to thank us. Merry early Christmas. I'm irate, especially because I bought my girlfriend a bench swing for one of the trees for Christmas, something she's always talked about having. The trees were not crossing their property line, and the bushes were solidly within our property as well. As aforementioned, there's a small dividing stone pathway between the 2 properties, but I also have a recent official survey done just before we moved in. Do I have any recourse even though they've contorted it to sound like it was a favor? Much appreciated. Too long didn't read, neighbors disfigured black walnut trees and uprooted what looks to be honey locust bushes on what a survey proves to be my property. Trespassed while I was away for work and had this done to plants without my authorization. Claims previous owner gave them permission, he disputes this. They sent an email telling us no need to thank them for the gift of lawn care. Merry Christmas. What now? Real quick, I just wanted to add a quick little explanation for why I read the Too Long Didn't Reads, because I have seen a few comments asking why I even bother with them. And the reason is, sometimes there's devil in the details that they include in the Too Long Didn't Read that they conveniently skimmed over in the rest of the story. It's small little things that can lead to a broader picture. So because of that, as a just in case, I still read the Too Long Didn't Reads. It's also nice for people who are listening to this as background noise and may not be fully paying attention and just have it for the sound, so they may not fully comprehend what they're listening to because they're busy, so the Too Long Didn't Read acts as more of a way to reground them into the rest of the story. Hopefully that answers the question to those of you who have asked me why I continue to include the Too Long Didn't Reads. Now, back to the story. Relevant comments. A downvoted commenter. Anything that overhangs their property is fair game. They have all rights to trim it back to property line. Ironically enough, they didn't read the story because that's actually firmly stated that the bushes were within OP's property line. OP responds, none of it hung over their property line, or even the stone pathway dividing us. It was right up against the edge of the divider, but did not cross the divider. We checked all this out when they made their initial complaint in case they had merit in asking they be trimmed. The bushes were set even further onto our property. RTK9 comments, you have it in writing that they damaged your property against your will. Get an arborist out there to evaluate the health of the trees, how much it'll take to treat them and care for them, to replace the bush, etc. Get survey maps that show they're on your property. Get photographs if you can from the prior owners to prove the prior condition of the trees. Sue them in court and nail their asses to the wall. If they're willing to put these shenanigans this early into being neighbors, they're going to keep doing it if you don't assert your own rights to your own property. It's no big thing, comments. Adding to this, I believe black walnut is highly valuable timber. Get a price for the wood that was taken away too. OP responds, yikes, I'll get an arborist to check this out. Thanks. Spygirl43 comments, I'd also file a police report, but after the report by the arborist, they came onto your property and destroyed part of it. OP responds, considered filing a police report but wanted to wait until I'd heard more from the sub. Now, I'm glad I waited. I reached out to a couple arborists and I'm seeing who can get here soonest. Thanks. Update, January 1st, 2019, 19 days later. I consulted 3 separate arborists officially, plus had an arborist friend check things over unofficially. The uprooted bushes were honey locusts and the branches cut from my black walnut were valuable lumber. It was also determined that since the bushes and trees were acting as privacy barriers and no longer served that purpose, that I would require extra compensation to come up with a means of a new privacy barrier. It was initially going to be $2,300 for the missing honey locust, $1,600 for the first uprooted one, and $1,800 for the second. Then, sweet Jesus. Then we got to the issue of the black walnut trees. One was cut in such a way that it was permanently damaged and will likely have to be removed, so costing them $17,000. The next deemed to have lost enough lumber to be worth $4,000. And the final one, $25,000. This was the initial decision. There were just a few more steps before everything was finalized. But then... we had 2 arborists at this point, the first and the second opinion. Then a third, the first we ever called, who came highly rated but was unable to get to us anytime soon. Had a cancellation and got in contact. We figured, why not? Anything to fortify our case. He comes and looks and observes our trees have been afflicted by 1,000 canker disease, and they'd all have to be removed. And they may have even exposed other, old, vulnerable trees on our property that the neighbors didn't even touch to this disease. The first arborist had raised the concern, but a kind Redditor, u/thermophile, had even written about the condition after my initial posting. But no one caught it until this arborist, as it was still in its early stage. All told, 3 other, less valuable, trees on my property had to come down. All black trees had to come down. And not only do they owe me $158,000, but they'll be charged with criminal trespassing. Now, I didn't want to be a horrible, vindictive person and target an elderly couple over a dispute like this, so I asked around to other people in the neighborhood and asked what their experience has been with these neighbors. Resoundingly, they said, do it, press charges. Apparently in the years they've lived here, they've called the police on kids having a lemonade stand for lack of permit to run a business, called ICE twice on a Filipino family on the road, and had similar weird disputes to this one they had with me over plants and lawn ornaments. It appears they'll have to sell their house to pay me, and they won't be missed. Thank you all for the advice. Honestly, from this post, I really only learned 2 things. The first one being, don't cut down your neighbor's trees. This one's fairly obvious and I would never dream of it in 100 years. But still, don't trespass to cut down your neighbor's trees, especially when they're not on your property. The second thing that I learned is that for some reason, botanists have decided to give plant-based illnesses the coolest fucking names ever. Like seriously, 1,000 canker disease? I decided to go on a bit of a Googling spree and found out some pretty cool ones like fire blight, emerald ash borer, anosis root rot, Dothystroma needle blight. These sound like fucking spell diseases that you would cast on someone to make their entire bloodline suffer. Fucking awesome. Probably not for the tree though, because some of these sound extremely painful. I always knew that to be a botanist, you'd have to be a special kind of nerd. I see you motherfuckers, and I appreciate the game you play. Don't forget, this is brought to you by GamerSupps. Use code ODDS at checkout. It's basically a caffeine powder that you put in your water, and I actually really like it. I use this on a daily basis. Don't forget that every purchase you make using code ODDS directly supports the channel. And if you want a personal recommendation from me, I would either recommend the Soda Pressing Pear or Dragon Fruit Punch. Those 2 are currently my favorite flavors. And as a note, once we sell a certain amount of stuff, I get my own flavor and my own cup. And you all know I'm gonna choose some degenerate shit that's gonna make their PR team squirm. My goal is to make them regret partnering with me. So please, use code ODDS at checkout to make my dream come true of making a PR team squirm.